Hello, and welcome to today's discussion about our new certificate in Applied Psychometrics. So in essence, this is an opportunity for folks to work with psychologists and school psychologists while, if they have interest in doing that kind of work, and particularly having to do with testing and diagnostics. Kelsey is going to be helping out with this presentation. So Kelsey, do you mind going ahead and turning to the next slide? All right, so I'm going to go through just a brief overview of the information about this program. Please hold your questions until the end, and then we will address any questions that you might have. So what is a psychometrist and what do they do? Well, they work in a lot of different settings, and pretty much anywhere that a licensed psychologist or a school psychologist can work. And so they work underneath the supervision of a licensed psychologist or school psychologist, administering tests like IQ tests and achievement tests, but also personality assessments, drug and alcohol assessments, sex offender assessments, social, emotional, behavioral assessments, all those kinds of things. And so what will usually happen is that the psychologist will meet with the client, and based off of that, a case conceptualization will be formed. And part of that case conceptualization is, what do we think might be the problem? Why might there be an issue? And the next thing we want is to collect data to determine, to help us figure out what's going on. Some of the data is to make diagnostic decisions. Maybe the person has autism or ADHD or learning disability or something like that. And part of the questions might be systems. Maybe there's something happen that's a mismatch between this child and a school environment or a work environment or home environment. And then once the psychologist or school psychologist has collected the information, they can help put together a plan of treatment. So the psychometrist is the person who helps the psychologist collect the data, and that could be interviews and observations, it could be records, or it could be tests. And from that, the psychologist will make the diagnoses. Psychometrists do not diagnose, but they do help with the collection of all the data that will be useful in making the diagnosis. Kelsey, do you mind going ahead and advancing another one? So where might they work? Well, anywhere that a psychologist would work, right? Clinics, private practice, treatment centers, hospitals, correctional facilities, those are all very common places for a psychometrist. And so you'll notice I skipped over K through 12 schools. Well, K through 12 schools, they hire school psychologists. And school psychologists do not have to have a doctoral degree like other psychologists do. They could have what's called an ed specialist degree, which is a master's degree plus a year of internship, and they can work in the schools. Licensed psychologists that are not also school psychologists cannot work in the schools and provide and conduct assessments. And so psychometrists, the training program that we have developed here, is specifically designed so that you would be able to pursue opportunities in both psychometry, which is clinics and private practice, as well as a school psychological assistant, and that would be working in the schools doing the same work that they would be doing outside of the schools. But this particular certificate is designed to train for both settings. All right, Kelsey? So as we just talked, that there are two different settings. The school psychological assistants work in preschool through 12th grade schools, whereas psychometrists could work in private practice, hospitals, clinics, etc. The supervisor for school psychological assistant is the school psychologist, who may or may not have a doctoral degree. whereas the psychometrist has to work under the supervision of a licensed psychologist. In order to, what are the things that you have to do? Well, you would need to complete a training program or training opportunities like this one. And if you're not looking to work in the schools, pretty much you just have to pass the drug test, right? And maybe some sort of, interviews and things like that, just as you would for a traditional job. To work in the schools, though, you would need to pay a fee of $180. You'd have to get a background check, and you would have to continue with professional development and continuing ed, and then, or you would also have some additional course requirements, including coursework in parental involvement and family engagement. That coursework, if you were pursuing an undergraduate degree in teaching, you would have already gotten. And so that pathway works really well for folks that are getting undergraduates in teaching. If you're not getting an undergraduate in teaching, you could just take an extra couple of classes and then be able to pursue that aspect or that choice in this career path. If not, well, you just go with working outside of the schools as a psychometrist. Again, Kelsey, sorry. So what do you have to do in order to get into this program? Well, we require that you be doing pretty well in school. You need to have a 3.0 GPA. You need to be pursuing or have granted a bachelor's degree. And so part of this certificate is that in order to do this work, you do have to have an undergraduate degree. You do not have to have a graduate degree. And the undergraduate degree plus this extra training. So if you are currently pursuing your undergraduate degree, you need to have at least 60 credit hours. So you must be a junior or a senior in standing. And you need to be doing pretty well. You need to have a 3.0 or a B or higher average in general, but also you need to be doing a B or higher in your introductory psych and mathematics courses that you have to have completed. If you've already graduated with your undergrad, I'm going to look back at those transcripts and then see if you've met these requirements or credentials. Ideally, you would have completed or be working towards your bachelor's degree in one of these fields: human services, psychology, social work, sociology, education. There are other undergraduate degrees or bachelor's degrees that could be considered, but it would have to be decided on a case-by-case basis. All right. All right, so like I said, there are two pathways in order to get the certificate. One is if you are currently an undergraduate, or if you are already graduated. So for those folks that are currently undergrads, you would seek this as a minor. And so this would be considered, that's exactly what it would be. You'd have to go in, apply for it as a minor, just add it on, and then upon graduation and completion of the program, you would receive valid verification that you had completed all the necessary steps in order to be able to work as a psychometrist. If you already have a bachelor's degree, well, you would need to apply as a non-degree seeking student as an undergraduate degree, and the certificate information would be there. And you would just take the courses without anything else. You would need to take any undergraduate classes in addition for the psychometry eligibility. All right. All right, so how does one apply? Well, basically, you email the program coordinator. And so that's me. I'm Kathleen Kroc, Dr. Kroc. And that is the email address you can email me to. You would need to provide undergraduate transcripts, if you've gotten a degree from or working towards a degree, an undergraduate degree. And then we're going to look through and make sure that you've met those requirements about having a B and having complete in those particular courses, basic math and basic psych, and that you're far enough along into your program, as a junior or senior status or having graduated from it. Then you would meet with your undergraduate advisor, and then you would submit a change of major form, and then your major would stay the same, but you would add a minor, and then here's the program code. And then you would go ahead and enroll in our, you'd have to email us, same address, and we would grant you permission to either enroll in 301 or 302. And basically, we'll take 12 students per section of the courses. At this point, we're going to only offer one section this fall. And once we have had 12 individuals who've met the requirements, we will not be taking any additional individuals. So that is what that looks like. So you could start either in the fall or in the spring. If you start in the fall, you would take EPP 301. Or if you start in the spring, oh, that's not right. It's actually EPP 302 starts in the fall for some reason, and 301 starts in spring. And you would be encouraged to take, if you start in the fall, a second class that will be discussed in just a minute. All right, Kelsey? All right, if you have finished your bachelor's degree, you basically just do the same sort of thing. You email us, make sure that you get the clearance to say that you qualify. You apply as a non-degree seeking student, you pay whatever fees and immunization records and stuff, and then you would email the instructor, get permission to take those classes, and enroll in them. Right, so what would the program look like? Well, if you are an undergraduate seeking student, you would be taking these two classes in the fall and spring. And then the summer after that, you would take one internship. And then the next year, you would take in 2 more semesters of internship. So it does take about 2 full years in order to finish the program. If you're pursuing a degree, this would be just 2 classes that you're taking in addition to what you've already gotten. And so these are the classes. So the fall class is going to be just what is testing and diagnostics, and what is IQ, and what is achievement, like what is personality, this, and then how do we measure it? So that's that first class. So, what do we know about tests? How do we know if it's a good test? How do we know whatever? And so that class is 3 credits. And then the second thing you would do is take an applied psychometrics class. And in this case, it will be where you're being taught how to actually administer either an IQ, an achievement test, or some of the personality assessments. You have to take EPP 401 before you can take EPP 402 in the spring. And so EPP 402 is going to just be a continuation of learning how to give some of the tests. And the second class there is going to be an ethics and law of tests and measurement. And so basically it's 2 classes in the fall, 2 classes in the spring, and then internship. And we will, you do have to complete 500 logged hours of internship across 9 credits, so 3 semesters. And we will work with you to help you find an internship placement. All right, and so those are the foundations or fundamentals of this program. It really is designed to allow you an opportunity to work with psychologists and help us solve puzzles and problems that are human beings. So it does lead to a career path, but it also allows you an opportunity to gain skills that look really good when applying to EDS programs for school psychology or doctoral programs for school psychology, clinical counseling, or IO. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them at this time. So the question that was put here is it possible to complete this if I have an incoming senior? Absolutely. You may not, so you may go ahead and get started on it and then graduate. And then if that happens, then you would finish up post-graduation and you would get the certificate afterwards. Instead of it being a minor, it'd just be a certificate. And with that certificate, you would be able to document that you had completed the training. So you could start it, anytime your junior or senior year, or even you could start the program after your undergraduate degree has been granted. Any of those three options are perfectly fine. So the credits are classes that you would be charged for as you would any class. I don't know how, if there's any fee difference for classes as a non-degree seeking student, which after graduation, that's what you would be, versus someone who is currently in an undergraduate program. I will say that there is a giant shortage of mental health providers in the state of Nevada and nationwide. And so one of the reasons that we developed this program was to help psychologists and school psychologists be able to provide more services by having folks who can assist them with their jobs.
Feel free to ask more questions. I'm just going to advance the slide to the email that you used to contact Dr. Kroc to submit your transcripts and things like that to make sure you qualify for the program. And then that QR code on the screen is a link to our interest form that you can submit, so we will email out this presentation and any other details about the certificate.
So some stuff to consider is that we are starting the program this fall, which is kind of a tight turnaround, but anyone that is interested, we are not, it's not waiting for a whole nother year. It's ready to go. In addition, the courses, so like I said, there are 4 classes and 3 internships. 2 of the courses, the 301 and 302 courses, are completely asynchronously online. The 401 and 402 classes, where you're going to be like digging in and getting your, getting your hands on the test kits, those will be in person. They will be, I think there are 4 o'clock classes, so that folks who are already working or have already graduated, if they are interested in joining those 401 and 402 classes, they could do so more easily than if it was in the regular daytime. It looks like we don't have any other questions at this time. If you do think of something and you're like, I really, really, really wish I'd asked about, contact me. I am always interested in hearing from y'all and happy to help with this process and introducing you to this field that I adore so much. Thank you all for coming.